Some heroes never seek recognition. They don't want medals, they don't ask for praise. Captain Alyssa Ward was one of them. Quiet, humble, and to the new recruits. Seemingly ordinary until the day an F-35 pilot called for help in the middle of a deadly blizzard. That was the day the world discovered the legend hidden inside an old A-10 pilot. A legend whose codename was Raven. At Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Alyssa Ward lived a quiet, unassuming life as a flight instructor. To the fresh-faced recruits passing through, she was just another pilot, grounded for one reason or another. Her office was plain, with no medals on display, no framed photos of her in a cockpit, no war stories to tell. She kept to herself, her presence blending into the background. But what these young aviators didn't know, what no one talked about, was her past. They didn't know that she was once one of the most feared and skilled A-10 Thunderbolt pilots in Afghanistan. Her call sign, Raven, was whispered only in the most classified circles. Her missions were the stuff of legend, but the files were sealed. Her reputation was mythical, a ghost story told by seasoned veterans. Her past was buried deep, but some legends refused to stay buried forever. And on this day, the alarm sounded, ready to unearth it. Suddenly, the piercing shriek of sirens blared across the entire base, cutting through the calm afternoon. A young radio operator, face pale with urgency, burst into the pilot's lounge, shouting for any senior pilots available. Most of the experienced aviators were already in the air or off duty. But Alyssa stood up from her corner table, her coffee untouched, and followed him without a word. Inside the control room, the atmosphere was thick with tension. A crowd of officers huddled around a large satellite feed, their faces illuminated by the flickering screen. A single, blinking red dot marked a distress signal. Colonel Ramirez, the base commander, saw her enter and his expression tightened. "Ward, we've got a situation." He pointed to the map. An F-35 has lost all control over Lake Superior, and the pilot is a rookie. The details were grim. Lieutenant Harlow's navigation systems were completely dead. His fuel was dangerously low, and the weather, already bad, was rapidly turning into a full-blown blizzard. Emergency rescue teams were hours away, grounded by the storm, if help didn't reach him, and reach him soon. He was going down into the frozen lake. A younger officer, full of protocol and procedure, spoke up, his voice sharp with protest. "Sir, with all due respect, sending up an A-10 is a non-starter. It can't possibly keep up with an F-35, not in this weather." Alyssa, who had been listening silently, offered a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "It's not about speed," she said, her voice calm, but carrying an authority that silenced the room. "It's about surviving hell." Colonel Ramirez didn't hesitate for a second. He had heard the stories. He knew who he was looking at. He locked eyes with her and said the two words that had been spoken on this base in years. "Raven, you're up." The command sent a shockwave through the hangar. Mechanics who had been on a coffee break scrambled into action. They rushed to prep her old A-10, a battle-scarred warhorse still wearing the faded combat markings of missions long past. As Alyssa climbed the ladder into the cockpit, one of the crew chiefs yelled up to her over the wind, "Ma'am, be advised, crosswinds are hitting 60 knots out there." She strapped herself in and replied with unnerving calm, "Good, that'll slow him down enough for me to catch him." The A-10's twin engines growled to life, a deep, guttural roar that felt out of place on the modern airbase. With a final check, Alyssa pushed the throttles forward and lifted off, disappearing almost immediately into a solid wall of white. Visibility dropped to nearly zero. The wind was a brutal, physical force, trying to tear the aircraft from the sky. Her instruments were her only guide in the swirling chaos. Over the radio, Command Center updated her, their voices strained. "Raven, be advised, Harlow's altitude is dropping fast. We're losing his transponder signal." Alyssa's eyes scanned her radar, her fingers dancing across the controls as she locked onto the faint, dying signal. "Lieutenant Harlow, this is Raven. I'm inbound to your position. Talk to me," a voice, trembling with fear and cold, crackled back. "Ma'am, I can't control her. The systems are gone. I'm gliding into nowhere." Alyssa's response was firm, cutting through his panic like a blade. "Negative, Lieutenant. You're not going nowhere. You're coming home. I have a visual on you in 2 minutes. Hold on." Through the blinding snow, she finally saw a flicker of motion, a dark shape against the grey-white fury. The F-35 was wobbling violently, like a wounded bird falling from the sky. Alyssa eased her A-10 up beside him, a delicate and dangerous dance in the middle of a hurricane. She expertly matched his slow, unstable pace, her older, heavier aircraft becoming a point of stability in his world of chaos. "Harlow, forget your instruments. They're lying to you. Put your eyes on me and fly on my wing," she commanded. Snow and ice slammed into both aircraft, threatening to bring them down. Sensing a layer of denser, smoother air below, she dipped her wing and descended. He followed her move perfectly, a flicker of the trained pilot inside him reawakening. They were a team, Bird. Just as a sliver of hope appeared, the rookie's voice came back over the radio, barely a whisper. "Ma'am, my fuel gauge is on 0. I'm almost out." This was it. The moment where training ends and instinct takes over. Alyssa's combat sensors, honed over hundreds of classified missions, went into overdrive. She had done something like this before, years ago, in the fiery skies over a forgotten battlefield, dragging damaged jets home under enemy fire. "Harlow, listen to me very carefully. Drop in behind me. I'm going to bump you." There was a moment of stunned silence, then panic. "What? Ma'am, that's impossible. We'll both go down." Her voice remained steady, a rock in the storm. "Trust me." She skillfully eased her A-10 back, decelerating until her plane's hardened nose was just inches from the F-35's tailhook assembly. Then, with a surgeon's precision, she gently made contact. A tiny burst of throttle, then another. She was pushing him, guiding him, transferring her own power to keep him airborne. Through the whiteout, a thin black line appeared in the distance, the runway. It was their only hope. "Harlow, you have the lead," Alyssa ordered. "Bring her in. I'll shadow you all the way down." The young pilot's voice was shaky. "Ma'am, if I stall on final approach," she cut him off, her tone leaving no room for doubt. "You won't. Raven's on your 6. The F-35, running on fumes and a prayer, hit the runway hard but stayed upright, skidding to a halt in a cloud of snow. Seconds later, Alyssa brought the A-10 down with a smooth, practiced landing, the snow swirling around her as she taxied to a stop. When Lieutenant Harlow finally climbed out of his cockpit, his face was pale and he was shaking uncontrollably. He stumbled toward her as she disembarked. "Ma'am, you saved my life." She simply shook her head. "No, Lieutenant, you saved it. I just reminded you how to fly when everything goes wrong." Back in the warmth of the control room, the entire base had fallen silent, every officer and operator frozen, having witnessed the impossible on their screens. After a long moment, Colonel Ramirez turned to the crowd of young pilots and technicians, a look of profound respect on his face. He finally said, "Ladies and gentlemen, meet Raven, the best damn pilot you've never heard of." From that day forward, Captain Alyssa Ward was no longer the quiet, unnoticed instructor. The ghost had returned. Her legend had taken flight once more. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and fly high.